So this is just the beginning, guys. Not only of my presentation here, but of your careers. You've finished this academy, and now you're moving into a new chapter, and it's the orientation process. Many of you have already gotten jobs, and you're actively in that now. And some of you are still trying to get there, which is okay. So we want to discuss one hiring to rule them all. We want to talk about how you can be that new hire that is optimal, that one that maybe you've got some co-hires and you are the high performing one. And we're also going to talk about some negative aspects too and things you want to avoid. Because the fact of the matter is, not everyone makes it off orientation. I mean, that is the sad reality. It's not over when you get the job. So we want to talk about some of the characteristics of how you fail in orientation and how you can succeed. And the way I wanted to do this is I'm going to break it down into archetypes. But to kind of set this up, many of you are probably used to being in your current environment a big fish in a small pond or a small fish bowl. Maybe you're the top performer wherever it is that you're working and you're used to getting those allocates. But when you enter this realm, this is you and this is your crew. You're all drowning together. The flight medicine realm is the great equalizer. This is where you're humbled and you realize that you're surrounded by top performers. You're surrounded by everyone who was a top performer where they come from. So you kind of find yourself at the bottom of the totem pole a little bit. And so we want to talk about how you can stand out and how you can still succeed, but also kind of keeping that in mind. So I mentioned talking about some archetypes. Now, obviously, this is going to be a huge overgeneralization, and no one person necessarily fits a certain template. But what I want you to do is as I go through these archetypes and these types of people that I've seen fail and succeed as new hires, I want you to think about maybe some of the characteristics that are in line with your own personality. Maybe you recognize something in yourself that's positive. Maybe you recognize something in yourself that's negative and how you can mitigate some of that. So these are what I am calling my three archetypes. Number one, we have the Socialite. So this is going to be the first one we're going to cover. The second one is the Aristocrat. And then number three is going to be the Sponge. So let's talk about the Socialite. The Socialite is someone that probably you can judge by the name, prioritizes socializing over anything else. And I kind of crack up when I talk about this one because this one is very much opposite of who I am as a person, my own behaviors. But this is the person that is usually that minimum experience hire. This is usually the person that comes in and maybe they were just at the 3-year mark. And what we see is they have behaviors such as showing up late. And when I say showing up late to work, I don't mean that you're showing up, 2 minutes after, 5 minutes after, whatever your shift. In this realm, if you're on time, you're late. That's how we view that. The expectation is that you show up early as a common courtesy to those that you work with. Not only is this person showing up late, but they're not mission ready. The Socialite isn't in uniform, or maybe they're in uniform, but it's not zipped up all the way and their boots are unlaced and their flight suit's tucked in their boots and they just kind of look disheveled and are missing that professional appearance. They haven't ate yet. They haven't been caffeinated. So this is them at the briefing table in the morning. They're sitting there eating their breakfast out of uniform and everybody's kind of looking at them, all their preceptors and those senior crew members, and they're looking at this person thinking, what are they doing? They're not checking equipment like they're supposed to do. They're really not prioritizing the job that they're there to do. They're kind of just doing these other things, such as maybe even taking a selfie. The Socialite tends to be the person that puts on the helmet and takes a selfie in front of the tail rotor, maybe before they've even taken care of a patient or had their aviation safety briefing, and it's posted on Facebook. And the Socialite is someone that tends to overcompensate a little bit. They don't really know what they don't know. Maybe there's a significant knowledge deficit there. And when you ask them a direct question, they answer with maybe 20 words of the wrong answer, as opposed to just 5 words that would suffice of the right answer. And they kind of just go in circles and not really being able to address what the real problem is. And unfortunately, that's what really makes the socialite one of the most dangerous ones. In my opinion, the socialite is one of the worst of the archetypes of the new hires. And unfortunately, this is the person that I see all the time that doesn't make it off orientation. This is the person that either fails up to the point that they're let go during orientation, or occasionally they'll get off orientation, but then there starts to be a trend when they're in an autonomous environment of making poor decisions. And then they're essentially giving an ultimatum and they end up leaving, kind of realizing they bit off maybe more than they can chew. So the socialite is definitely not someone that you want to be. So let's talk about the aristocrat a little bit. So the aristocrat, I like to imagine, is the person who lack of experience isn't a problem for them. The aristocrat is probably someone that just cashed in on a 20-year 401k and now they're looking to change up their career a little bit. They've been in medicine a long time, or maybe this is someone that used to work in transport in some capacity. Maybe it was a smaller program, or maybe it was several years ago. And they come in and they're usually right on time. We'll say maybe right at 15 minutes every single day, but they don't really go out of their way. They can be fairly professional. Maybe they are in uniform, but you notice that they have this habit of always doing the bare minimum. This is the person that doesn't socialize, which, we want to be balanced. We obviously want to prioritize our care and, our equipment checks and doing some of our daily duties, but we also want to try to build a rapport with those we work with. And when you're someone that's a bunk room recluse, like the aristocrat can be, people kind of start to wonder. And it's like, why is this person not socializing? You can be isolated pretty easily. Obviously, this isn't, high school, and we're not trying to win social points from people, but it's important because that's part of CRM and really how you develop good communication with those you work with. This is the person that tends to be a little bit egotistical. Maybe because of their experience, they don't read their protocols when they have downtime, or they don't practice their skills. They just kind of assume that they know everything. And the sad part is that this really makes this person unteachable. They kind of say, in my experience, when you ask them a clinical scenario question, this, in my opinion, this is how that person looks when they say, in my experience, because they're not speaking from evidence. They don't have evidence to back up what they're saying aside from their years of experience. And people are going to call you out on that. Your preceptor will call you out on that. So you want to make sure that you say what you know, and you back it up with evidence. And then you also say what you don't know. So when it comes to the aristocrat, it kind of tends to be a little bit more of a 50-50. This person usually either starts to slowly recognize their deficits and they make an active change, and then maybe they do succeed and they finish up their last 5 to 10 years or whatever, their career in flight, and they do fairly well. Or they continue to be hard-headed and they don't do that. So though maybe not as bad as the socialite, when you have behaviors like the aristocrat, again, it can be very challenging and you can still fail. So we start to wonder, what kind of new hire are you going to be? We've talked a little bit about, again, some of these overgeneralized archetypes. Do you notice, again, those characteristics in yourself? And how do you think you can improve? How can you have that new hire mindset and that level of professionalism that's really going to set you up for success when you find yourself in these environments? Well, let's talk about the sponge. And the reason I call this one the sponge is because the sponge is someone that absorbs everything around them, yet they have a tough enough skin that they're able to do the job and they're able to take feedback. The sponge is the person that shows up earlier than everyone else and leaves later than everyone else. They're at least 30 minutes early and they leave at least 30 minutes late. This is the person that is mission ready. They're well rested, they're in uniform, they've had breakfast, they're caffeinated, and they show initiative. This is my favorite mentee, or not mentee, but orientee, because this is the person that is there and already checking equipment before you even get there as a preceptor. And those type of behaviors are definitely going to get noticed. This person is really good at prioritization of tasks. This is someone that, again, prioritizes equipment checks when it's appropriate. When they have downtime, they're reading through their protocols. They're practicing skills on the mannequins that are there at base. And they show initiative by asking questions when they're in clinical scenarios. So they utilize that resource of a preceptor, and the preceptor can gauge their honesty. And this person, though humble, they're confident. But with that humility, they're able to recognize when they have a deficit, which is so huge. And we're going to highlight some more of that as we get through this. This person knows what they know, and they rely on that experience, but they also recognize that they're in a new environment. And that's how all of you are going to be. But you can still go above and beyond. And just like you went above and beyond in this curriculum this year, in this Flight Academy, the sponge tends to be the person that succeeds through orientation. They tend to go and be a preceptor themselves. And then eventually they become even a mentor. And then they pay that forward, and they're able to be a good person and a good resource to other students and other ones that want to get into the field. And I really do believe that many of you have this capability. So to address what we talked about before, one of the biggest issues of being a new hire and adapting to this new environment, again, is that level of competence and recognizing what you don't know. And there's actually a systematic approach to this, and it's called the hierarchy of competence. So you can see there's various stages. You basically go from the person who doesn't know what they don't know, and then all the way to the top in that blue section, which is really your experts. These are the ones that know what they know, and they know so much that they're able to do things second nature, and they're able to multitask. And that's really where you want to get. And that's how you're going to level up from not knowing what you don't know all the way up to that expert level, and that level where you can operate independently and will ultimately get you off orientation. So you have to approach it that way. You have to first figure out what you don't know. And then that's when you get into that yellow section, that conscious incompetence, recognizing I don't know this, so I have to do something about it. And then once you find out how to do that, then you're that conscious competence. So now you know what you're supposed to do with a little bit of effort, but the knowledge is there. And that's what you want to try to develop as you're going through your orientation process. And one way that you can actively do this is, again, systematic approach, evidence-based, is the Miller's Pyramid. And a lot of people probably already do this to a certain degree, but it kind of goes unspoken. This gives you, again, a map of how to navigate orientation and how to develop your knowledge. If you find yourself in a scenario and you recognize a deficit, maybe you had a bad patient, a run, and you're debriefing with your preceptor. First of all, you've recognized, okay, there's something here that I don't know, so I need to do something about it. Because if you don't recognize that and you don't do anything about it, you don't progress. And again, you start to become that socialite. Or maybe you become the aristocrat where you think you know, but actually you're way off base and then you fail anyways. So as the sponge, you're going to begin fact gathering. You need to find out the information, whether it's disease process or how to perform an intervention. You have to find out the facts, the evidence, you have to study, and then you have to challenge that knowledge. So once you know how to do it, you then need to find the application. So you have to be able to take what you learned and apply it to a scenario. So maybe you can start to test yourself in your own downtime, or maybe you can ask your preceptor to go over some scenarios with you and start to find those transport aspects that are going to be unique to that environment. And then you can learn how to handle that better. And then that gets into the demonstration of techniques. Maybe this is in a real patient scenario. So then you get that opportunity again. And these are the things and the cues that your preceptor is going to be able to gauge and see that you're taking active measures. And then the proof is going to be in you improving on patient care when that situation comes up again. And then ultimately you do that, you integrate it into your practice, and then you're able to do it. And again, get you off orientation. That is the ultimate goal. This is a little bit cheesy, but I mean, this can be you guys. Most of you are already well on your way there. You can be an independent flight provider and you will succeed if you just take a systematic approach, be honest with yourself. This really is not the end. This is the end of my presentation now, full circle, but this is not the end of your all's journey. So I just really hope that you take this seriously, have that good new hire mindset. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you all. I look forward to learning more about your careers, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris. This episode was brought to you by IA Med. IA Med is an organization that offers engaging and applicable content to your practice. They offer everything from a flight medical provider course to their new and innovative POCUS course. So go to iamed.us and see how you can have one of the best educational experiences possible.